everyone, it's Mithrilda and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. So I've been following the Evolve Artist curriculum for the past few weeks and I'm here to provide a quick update about what I've been doing. So basically, it's been a lot of fun and I have a pretty good impression of the course so far. I feel like I agree with a lot of the things that Kevin has been saying, and a lot of it is also stuff that I've heard before from artists that I really look up to and admire. So it's really cool how they all agree on some stuff, which makes me feel like this is a good path to be going down. So the first exercise is about the basics of getting started with oil paints. It goes over how to properly transfer the image onto the canvas, mix the paint, use 3 basic brush strokes, and clean the brushes. Basically, Kevin says that there are 2 parts to a painting: the drawing, which shows the actual placement of the things on the canvas, and the values, which are made of the interaction between light and shadow. In block 1, we learn about the light and shadow first, so we have the transfer images for the first 18 exercises. Then we start drawing our own drawings in block 2, and we no longer use any transfer images. Block 2 is all about proportions and drawing from life and drawing from photographs. He says that he's found that it's easier for students to learn when we do the light and shadow first as opposed to the drawing first, and that's why he teaches it in this order. The separation of learning the light and shadow from learning to draw the actual lines was really interesting to me because I feel like that's really backwards from what I usually see, right? Because in drawing courses that I've looked at before, they go straight into proportion and doing that. But while I was going through this block, I happened to watch the collaboration video between Bucci and Proco that's on Proco's channel, and basically it was about like drawing with values, I think. And he said something similar to this. He said that if you don't have the drawing skills yet, you should just trace in a sorrow head and practice rendering the values and the light and shadow and stuff. So 2 people that I really trust saying the same thing, I feel like it's pretty credible. And in the videos for this lesson, he explains a few specific brushstrokes and when to use them, like one for getting the straight edges, one for filling the corners, and one for filling in the squares after you get the edges done. And it's a lot easier to master 3 strokes as opposed to like every way the brush can hit the canvas. And also, he says to turn the canvas around to get the best angles, which is crazy to me. I don't think I've ever seen a painter turn their canvas, so I didn't really feel like that was even possible. And this really reminds me of Drawbox, where Uncomfortable says to turn your paper for every line, and that it's much easier to learn to draw one line than to draw every single line you can possibly draw on a piece of paper. So again, 2 people I really look up to saying the same thing. I feel like it's pretty credible. And he also said some stuff that's really interesting that I never would have even really thought of, like as a problem to begin with. Like, for example, he says that when you first start working with the brushes, they'll feel really floppy and hard to control, but that's just because as you work with them, like little bits of paint will start to dry in the brush and it'll stiffen them up and it'll make it easier to work with. And I thought that was so crazy. Like the fact that, you know, your favorite artist could be using one brush and you buy that same brush, but you're not getting like the same experience because they've worked with that brush for many paintings and it just feels different and it's easier to work with at that point. It reminds me of mattresses because I just bought my first mattress and I saw online that a lot of people think that they've been scammed or something like that because they'll try a mattress in the mattress store and they'll get home and it'll be so stiff and they don't know why. But the thing is that you need to break in a mattress for 90 days until it really feels good and like becomes its full mattress self. And it's sort of the same thing with these brushes. The brushes aren't at their best when you first get them. They're at their best after you work with them for a while. And he says that the more you paint with them, the more they will mold themselves to the kind of style that you use with them. So you want to take care of the brushes so that after you break them in, you can still keep using them. He also says the best way to wash oil paint off your hands is not to wet them first, but to put dish soap on them first and rub it into your hands and into the oil paint, and then you wet it and wash it off. And it works great. Before, I used to just, like walk around with oil paint on myself because I would, wash my hands. It wouldn't come off. I'd be like, and then just leave. He says, no, you can actually wash it off. And I don't know, it works. So it's just little stuff like that people don't really mention because they feel like it's obvious or they just don't know a better way. Then exercise 2 is a page full of gradients, and it was a lot harder and it took a lot longer than I thought it would. I actually did the first part of the first page on stream, and I also listened to some of the course videos, so if you're interested in getting a taste of like what it was like in real time, hearing some of Kevin's course, check it out, find my playlist for my live streams, and you can give it a look. As I was doing them, I felt like they were taking so long, and I felt like I was being so slow. But I could see myself getting better and better as I went down the page, and I felt so proud when I got to the bottom. I was like, oh, look at this, it looks so good, gradients. And everyone in the stream was like, yeah, good job, look at your gradients. And I was like, oh yeah, look at my gradients. But then I moved on to exercise 3, which is another page of gradients. Basically what he said was that for exercise 2, you should experiment, play around with it, use different techniques, and try to figure out how to do the gradients. And then after you hash it out, exercise 3 should be just like a perfect page of perfect gradients. And I got some feedback on my gradients that like the middle section could be wider. I'm like mixing my colors. There's still like a distinct edge. And I'm like, oh no, I can see it now. They don't look perfect at all. Like I thought, they look like trash. And so I'm just sitting there trying to do these gradients on the third exercise. And I'm like, why does it look like trash? And I'm looking at it. I'm like, it's bad. And then I look back at exercise 2 and I'm like, oh my God. How could I ever think that was good? That looks like trash. I did some of the gradients for exercise 3 on stream, and someone said, A, I could never have your confidence, and B, I now understand why my gradients are never as smooth as this. And I'm like, yeah, what's up with that? Why am I so patient to be able to sit here and spend over 1 hour on each of these gradients? Because I normally am just a super impulsive, impatient person. I think it just has to do with the fact that before this, I never had any guarantee that if I spent more time on something, it would come out better. I could just waste 12 hours going in the wrong direction. However, in this case, I can clearly see how getting better gradients will lead to better paintings, and Kevin promised that if I put in my all, that my progress is guaranteed. So here I go with my hour-long gradients. I feel like this course is really challenging me to be able to work on a piece over a period of time because I normally hate leaving a piece unfinished at the end of the day. But here, I did exercise 2 over 3 days, and I did exercise 3 over 5 days. It's a big change for me, but being able to work until you can't improve any further rather than when the day is over is something that I know that great artists do, so I definitely need to work on going toward that. Also, I thought it was really interesting how in exercise 1, I felt like making the straight edges on the squares and making sharp corners was so hard, and I was so bad at it. So many of my squares are distinctly wobbly on the sides and rounded in the corners. However, partway through doing the gradients, it became the easy part. Like, I could do crisp edges and sharp corners without even really thinking about it, and the gradients became the hard part. This really reminds me of what Volan said about how you need to embed these lower level skills that are hard at first so deep into your mind that they become instinctual and easy. Then, when you don't have to think about them anymore, your brain can be freed up to start thinking about the higher level stuff, like composition and flow and storytelling. How can you even think of the higher level stuff if staying inside the lines is taking up all that brain energy? So yeah, I hope that one day these gradients will be a piece of cake and I'll be able to focus on even higher level problems. After I got my exercise 3 graded, I moved on to exercise 4, which is this lovely painting here of these cubes. Back to boxes, yay! Basically, he explained his basic method of counting the lights and shadows and then filling in the colors with paint. One point I thought that was really interesting was the fact that he said not to worry about the outer edges, just the inner ones. And I thought, well, I should just make them neat anyway, because wouldn't it be cool to have like little neat edges on the edge of my painting instead of like this messy, splotchy thing? But when I really thought about it, I was doing the thing that I keep telling other people not to do, which is to change the instructions on someone's course. If I really trust the lessons, I'm going to be leaning on the teacher to tell me what's important and what isn't. And if he thinks that being neat on the edges isn't important, then I'm wasting my time trying to do this when the extra hour could have been spent way more productively going further into the course. So I nixed that right away. Like, the only edge I did super neatly was this small black shadow over here. And then I realized I'm just wasting my time. If Kevin doesn't think it's important, then I shouldn't. He also emphasizes that we need to be learning the concepts from the video, then applying it in our work, not copying what he does as he does them. They also provide some checklists to make sure you're not skipping any steps in the method. He says to use them so you remember the steps and then you'll gain that instinct to check these things on your own, not to lean on them and be unable to paint without the videos or the checklists. To quote him, copying it from the video is not an education. Learning it from the video and applying it yourself, that's an education. I like that because in the end, that's what I want. Confidence and freedom, not another crutch, no matter how helpful it is. Another quote from Kevin, if you allow yourself to be a little uncomfortable in the beginning, just kind of stepping into it and doing the work without the training wheels, you'll find that you don't need this, referring to the checklist. You'll know what the order is and what you're looking for, and it's just getting a couple of paintings in before you can literally just throw this away. I thought this was really interesting. There's a balance between using something to learn and becoming dependent on it forever and not being able to move away from it. A lot of times I think beginners try to move away from stuff like photo references too soon before they even know what they're doing, thinking they might become too dependent on it. And I also see artists who stick too closely to the references and become incapable of working without it. Where that balance is, I'm not sure, but I guess I'll find out real soon as I go with the program. Exercise 5 is this sphere, and it's where we start to introduce gradients into the paintings. He also said something really interesting in the lesson. Right now, as you are coming into the program, you do not know enough to have opinions. And you know what? I am down for that. My brain flickered on for a few seconds when I decided to paint the outer edge of my painting neatly, but I shut that down real quick. I'm a bit too arrogant for my own good, and I need to check my ego at the door and take in the knowledge that I'm here to learn. After I master it and I know why we're doing stuff, then I can subtract the parts that I don't like. But he says that this course builds on top of itself, so if I don't put enough effort into one part of it, the stuff later on is going to suffer. And he says that in this course, he'll cover everything that isn't style or experience, everything that's knowledge. And that gives me enough faith and confidence for me to turn my brain off and not wonder, hey, when are we gonna do any drawing from life or learn proportions or color or whatever? And just focus on the now, knowing that everything will be covered later on. Yeah, we're using transfer images right now, but he makes sure to clarify that after these first 18 paintings, I will never need to use a transfer image again in my art career if I don't want to, because he's going to teach me the skills in order to move away from that. But for now, don't question it because it's part of the method. Also, I don't know if you noticed earlier, but I missed some parts of the transfer image and it was a big struggle to fill in that shape later. I had a bit too much confidence in myself and I didn't check things closely enough before I took the tape off the transfer image and like the transfer paper. To be fair, it is hard to keep track of what's been traced and what hasn't been because, like, I don't know, the graphite doesn't really show up super well against the black of the printed transfer image. I kind of want to experiment with a colored pen or something so I can actually see what I've lined over on the sheet. Also, my shoulder muscles are so sore after doing all this painting, but I think that should go away soon enough as I get stronger with these particular muscles. I am not very happy with the gradients in my sphere painting, especially the top edge of the sphere gradient and just the entire background gradient. They look like what I did on my first page of gradients with clear edges between the colors, and I know that I can do better. I saw that I still had stuff to fix, but I got scared that I would ruin the painting if I kept on working. I need to keep in mind that I am not here to make pretty paintings. I'm here to put my best effort in and fix everything I can see that can be fixed. And if I mess up, I know that I can fix it because I've made much worse mistakes on my second page of gradients, which is why it took over an hour per gradient. Overall, I feel like I've made really good progress, and I'm having a lot of fun going through these lessons and seeing the improvements. I can already feel the differences in my perception, like becoming more acutely aware of what a good gradient looks like. And I'm sure that as I learn more about how to spot it, I'll see even more mistakes in my previous work, which will mean that my observation skills are improving. Time-wise, all this stuff from exercise 1 through 5 took 34 hours. 3.5 hours for exercise 1, 9 hours for exercise 2, 13 hours for exercise 3, 4 hours for exercise 4, and 4.5 hours for exercise 5. Though I know that number should be higher, because if I actually put in as much effort as I should have taken at least like another 1 or 2 hours to get these gradients to where I know they can be. I'm not really sure how they got their numbers for their time estimate on the website, but they predicted that it would take 2 weeks at 7 hours a week to get to this point, so 14 hours total, and I took over double that time to get to the same point. Maybe I'm just exceptionally slow, but this is how long it took for me to put in my best effort. If I only did 7 hours a week, I would have spent 2 weeks just on exercise 3. So I would be a lot further behind. Also, these exercises are really more suited to longer sessions closer together than short sessions spread out apart, so like Saturday and Sunday versus Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's because at the end of every day, you have to spend time washing the brushes out. And I don't know, it's quite a bit of time. It takes me 5 to 10 minutes to wash the brushes depending on how many I use that day. And it's more efficient to wash them once after a 2-hour painting session versus twice after 2 1-hour painting sessions. Also, even with the clove oil to extend the drying time of the paint, it can still last only 2 to 3 days on the palette unless you freeze it or something. So unless you paint enough to use up all that paint within a few days, you're going to be having to take out new paint more often than you're using it up. Also, when I submitted my homework on the weekdays, it took 5 hours and 8 hours for it to be graded, whereas when I submitted it on the weekends, it took 30 minutes to an hour to get graded. I think that's because they check the homework twice a day during the week, but on the weekends, they'll just do it as it comes in, and I feel kind of bad for disrupting their weekends, but I felt like they were all graded pretty promptly, and I was able to work on the next exercise pretty quickly after I submitted it. I also did schedule one office hour session with Piper, who's the head instructor, and she was super helpful. I asked her a lot of questions on how long is the paint supposed to last. There was bits in my paint, and I was asking her what that was. She gave me tips on how to do the gradients better and whether or not I need to add more oil to my paints. She was just really friendly, and the scheduling was super easy, and they have 2 office hour sessions per week. And so I feel like getting help is pretty simple. I also posted a question in the Evolve Artist Facebook group, and a lot of people were super friendly and eager to help, and I feel like that's a great part of the course. There's 2 other people going through the course too that are in the Discord server, and I've been having a lot of fun talking to them. We're swapping tips, giving advice on the different exercises. So if you happen to be going through the course too, please join the Discord server and we can talk, and it'll be a lot of fun. And even if you aren't, also join the Discord server because it's great and a lot of fun. I'll also be streaming my Evolve stuff every Saturday. So if you're interested in, talking to me, seeing the course done in real time, drop by. It's been a lot of fun so far. The next painting, exercise 6, is going to be the first painting I'm doing without any instructional videos. Basically, they just said, here's a reference picture, now apply the stuff that you've learned so far. And I'm super nervous, but also really excited to be able to see, did I actually learn anything? Is it embedded in my mind? So I guess we'll see how that goes. And I'll be sure to really challenge myself to not settle for less than my best on the gradients. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of stuff about the course that I've thought of, so if you have any questions, please put it below in the comments. I think it's a pretty good course so far. I already see lots of improvement and I'm really excited because as the course goes on, we're just taking this stuff and then adding to it. Like eventually we're going to be adding highlights and shadows and reflections and all sorts of stuff. That's all I have for today, so remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work.